Let's speak to our parliamentary correspondent, Joseph Opoku Gakpo, who has a wrap of all of these events and related ones from Parliament. Joseph, if you can hear me, tell us what exactly was the mood of Ambrose Derry in the face of continuing pressure from some quarters for Ghana to institute more stringent restrictions in these times?
Essentially, his position is that the measures that government has rolled out are working for now. He doesn't want to be pushed into a conversation when it comes to jargons and words that should be used to describe what government is doing or what government intends to do. But he says that the systems, including what they've done at the airport by ensuring that those who are coming in afresh are quarantined, appears to be working. And for now, he would want a situation where members of the public are supporting government in the decision that it's taking on the advice of experts in order to protect Ghanaians broadly. In fact, the demand for a lockdown is something that has come up from a number of minority members of parliament. Joseph Yilechire, who is a former Minister for Health and is currently the MP for Wa West, interacted with the media outside Parliament a while ago and made that point that he thinks time is running out for the country in terms of the need to ensure a complete lockdown for some weeks. He thinks that that is a decision that should have been taken as far back as several days ago, and that it's about time that those efforts are made. Not just him, but again, other minority MPs, including Deputy Ranking Member on the Foreign Affairs Committee of Parliament, Alfred Okovandapoy, who is also the former mayor for Accra. He makes the point that with the fumigation that has been seen in markets across the country and all, those measures can actually be seen to have been working more effectively going forward if there's a complete lockdown of the country and people are encouraged more to stay home. But for the Interior Minister, Ambrose Derry, that is not something that is actually needed at this particular stage in the nation's lives, and that he thinks that the current measures are things that should be supported in order to keep the situation under control, and that when it comes to restricting entry into the country at the borders and all, government is taking the necessary measures to ensure that as well.
Did he have the opportunity to respond to the fact that this current quarantine of those who just arrived over the weekend has yielded such high numbers of positive cases? Has he had the opportunity to respond to the fact that some people believe that if these quarantine measures had been implemented earlier, we would have been able to stop even more positive cases coming into the country?
He makes the point that government is rolling out the processes and acting on the advice of experts as and when it becomes necessary to escalate whatever restrictions are being placed. Government will do that, and that's what government has been doing. For him, the time that these measures with the quarantining of those who are coming in from from outside the country actually came into force was actually the right time, and that the president took the right decision at the right time to have done that. And so he's not exactly convinced that if it had been done earlier or later, the results could have been different. But he says at the level of government, the security agencies and all the health officials and all are engaging in the necessary collaborations and having the right conversations, and that the president is taking very good advice on what should be done going forward, which is how come he thinks the said quarantining came in at the right time, and if there is the need for any other measures, they would come in at the appropriate time.
Did Mr. Derry talk about enforcement? We know that over the weekend there are some churches in the Volta region, for example. There was a church that was in full session, even though the police came there. That didn't stop them from continuing to worship. Then there's a pastor who's been arrested twice for the same offense. So what was the plan for enforcement of the president's directives going forward?
He makes the point that particular attention is being paid to the borders of the country. And he made reference to some arrests that have been made by particularly the Immigration Service. That was hugely his focus, making the point that they are encouraging members of the public who are seeing a situation where people would want to flout some of these directives to bring those issues to the attention of the police, the immigration, and the law enforcement agencies. He says that a medical doctor has actually been arrested for trying to get into the country using the borders at a time when there's a directive from the president and government generally that no one should get in. He said there are some people along the Togo border who have been involved in some of such acts, and he says that going forward, the security agencies are really on the alert, both at the border and across the country, and that the kind of supports they will need from members of the public is adequate information so that then they would be able to act on it at the level of the security agencies.
Now, yesterday we heard about the 8 members of parliament that the speaker had asked to self-quarantine or go into mandatory quarantine. We were learning that one of them is Mr. Mahama Ayariga. What else do we know about those who have been asked to stay away?
That's correct. You recall that when the Speaker indicated that 10 MPs have so far been asked to self-quarantine, he refused to disclose the names of the said MPs. But even before that, the Majority Leader last week had disclosed that the MP for Ayawaso East, Nessa Mahama Ture, and the MP for Binduri, Dr. Robert Kwanlep, are the 2 individuals. Now we're learning that Mahama Ayariga is one of them. And we've actually intercepted a communication that's gone to him from the Clerk of Parliament. And this is a letter to Mr. Ayariga dated the 20th of March 2020. And it comes under the heading, Notice on the Observance of Self-Isolation for the Purposes of Preventing the Spread of Coronavirus in Parliament. It's a 3-paragraph letter. Let me just run through it for you, Kojo. It says, and this is actually a letter from the Clerk of Parliament, the acting clerk, Cyril K.O. Intia, and it says, I'm instructed by Right Honourable Speaker of Parliament, Professor Michael Quay, to inform you that in view of your recent return to Ghana from a foreign trip on the 12th of March 2020, and in conformity with the World Health Organization protocols aimed at preventing the spread of the coronavirus, you are required to observe the minimum 2-week period of self-isolation in your residence. Accordingly, in order to reduce physical contact with honorable members and staff of Parliament, you are humbly requested to keep away from the precincts of Parliament until after the 27th of March 2020. And the final paragraph says, Honorable member, you are respectfully advised to consult Dr. Prince Pambo, the medical officer in charge of the Parliament Clinic, for a quick medical review prior to resumption of duty in Parliament House. And it says, please accept, Honourable Member, the assurances of the right Speaker's highest esteem. So he's not being asked just to stay home for 14 days and come back subsequently, but additionally, he is being asked to ensure that he shows up at the Clinic of Parliament and take clearance from the medical director there before he gets back to the House. But, Kojo, the interesting bit is, you'd recall that last week we spoke to the Honorable Mahama Ayariga right here on the show, on the Pulse, about the restriction, the imposition of restriction bill. So the point being that the Honorable Ayariga has been back in the jurisdiction for more than 10 days. He got back from where he had traveled to. He came to Parliament. He was in Parliament for a number of days. He interacted with a number of members of Parliament. He was on the floor. He interacted with the media. Before then, the directive came that he should self-quarantine. And looks like that's the case with a number of the MPs who have been returning from countries affected by this particular situation. And some of the commentary that's coming up is, looks like the Speaker's directive to the Honorable Ayariga and the other MPs, including Nessa Mahama Ture, the Binduri MP, and others, is coming in a little too late because a lot of the MPs got back from their travels, interacted with members of Parliament before the directive went to them on the 20th of March 2020. We wait to see what eventually the full feedback will be by the time that the 14-day mandatory quarantine period comes to an end.
Now, I know you've put your phone away, so forgive me, but I'd love to see the date of that letter. Do you recall it? What was the date of the letter that was sent to Mr. Ayariga? Because I think it'll be interesting to see how many days after his return the letter was written.
So the date of that particular letter is the 20th of March, 2020.
And he's been asked to stay away until the 20th.
He's been asked not to report to Parliament until after the 27th. So he's been asked to stay away until after the 27th of March 2020, and the letter is dated the 20th of March 2020. So the point is, it's supposed to be a 14-day self-isolation period.
But they're asking him to stay away for 7 days.
Around the 13th of March 2020, and he was in Parliament throughout that week until this letter got to him on the 20th of March. So he was in Parliament, he interacted with members of Parliament, with the journalists for like a week before eventually the letter got to him on the 20th of March alongside other members of Parliament for yet another period, indicating that he has to be away for yet another period. But the specific concerns when it comes to protecting MPs has actually come up again on the floor. In fact, a while ago, Joe Sewusu, who is the first Deputy Speaker who was presiding over sitting, expressed some form of discomfort over how come MPs are being asked to sit today until 6 p.m. So the House is currently on a break. They are expected to come back at 4 p.m. They've been dealing with the corporate insolvency bill, which is an item they've been dealing with for more than a month. Now, about an hour and a half ago, the majority leader, Oseiche Mensah-Bonsu, requested that the House takes a suspension and goes on a break and comes back at 4 p.m. The minority leader, Haruna Idrisu, expressed concern that in the light of the spread of the disease and the advice that there should be limited contact, MPs shouldn't be sitting for that long to be doing business. But the majority leader responded and said when they come back at 4, he will ensure that by 6 o'clock they will be done and that they will leave the chamber. But even as the House adjourned to allow for that, the first Deputy Speaker of Parliament made the point that in these times when limited contact is being encouraged, he thinks it's there's some form of discomfort in asking MPs to sit until 6 o'clock. But that decision was taken, and they've taken a break to return back, to actually return by 4, and they would sit until 6 o'clock. But the assurance is all other measures are being rolled out to ensure MPs are safe, apart from them sitting together for extended and very long hours.
Is there a quorum today, Joseph?
The number of MPs who were on the floor of the House, even as sitting proceeded, it's a figure that should be around 50, 60, not exactly up to the 80 plus that would really form a quorum for sitting to progress at any point in time. At a point in time in the course of the sitting, my counts show that the figures were in the region of 50, 60. No one raised it as an issue to then request that maybe sitting be suspended or anything of that sort. The minority side, including Muntaka Mubarak, who raised the issue yesterday, cooperated with the amendment and the debate and the conversation, even as the necessary processes continued.
Thanks once again for that comprehensive wrap-up of the day in Parliament. We appreciate it. Joseph Opoku-Gakpo is our parliamentary correspondent.